It is so important to use the correct paper for the type of artwork you are creating, because if you use the wrong paper, you can get a lot of problems. There are lots of different brands of paper out there, but some paper is only designed for certain mediums, so I am here to help by showing you some of my favourite paper brands and what I use them for. Using a smooth surface paper like the Bristol Smooth Surface 300 series is a great option if you are drawing coloured pencil portraits, illustrations, cartoons and graphite drawings where you want a smooth finish. You wouldn't want to use a rough textured paper if you were trying to achieve a smooth result, because as you draw over the bumps and grooves in the paper, it creates a very scribbly effect. So if you are drawing skin, you need paper that is smooth to create soft skin textures, so this paper is perfect for that. A smooth surface paper is also not suitable for wet mediums such as watercolor or solvents, as it is too thin and not textured enough to handle layers, and this paper also wouldn't work well for charcoal drawings, as charcoal needs something to grip onto, and I'll talk about the best types of paper for those mediums later on in the video. Vellum surface paper is similar to smooth surface paper, but it does have slightly more texture to it, so it is suitable for a lot of mixed media art, except for wet mediums again. Personally, I love the Strathmore Tone Tan and Grey versions, and as it has a rougher texture than smooth paper, it is able to hold more layers and textures, so it's better for building up more tone and value in your drawings. Toned paper is also fantastic for helping you to concentrate on your core values, so the lights and darks, and if you are a beginner and need to practice adding in highlights and shadows, then you may find a toned paper best for this, because those values show up really well. So what about charcoal and solvents? Charcoal is a dry medium, but it is very loose and needs a paper grain to stick to, whereas solvent is a wet medium, but it also needs paper grain to absorb into and paper that is slightly thicker as well. Firstly, charcoal is a very loose and powdery medium, so as you use charcoal pencils, a lot of loose pigment will fall onto the paper. This loose pigment needs to grip onto something or it will fall off the paper. By using paper with some texture to it, the loose powder will be able to grip onto the grooves of the paper. I personally love using a hot press watercolor paper such as the Fabriano hot press paper for charcoal, as there is some texture to the paper and the charcoal will stick to it. If you're using a solvent, Gamsol or paint thinner with your coloured pencils, I will also use a hot press watercolour paper for this. As I said, hot press watercolour paper has some texture to it, so as you use a solvent, the solvent absorbs into the grooves of the paper. Also, as a solvent is a wet medium, you must only use this on paper that is thick enough, and watercolour paper is designed for wet mediums and is £140 or 300 GSM squared in weight, meaning it can handle a solvent. Using the correct paper for watercolour is so important because watercolour is a wet medium, so you're going to need quite a thick paper to absorb the water. There are two variations you can get, and that is hot pressed or cold pressed paper. I personally love the watercolour paper versions from Arches and Fabriano. Hot pressed paper has some tooth to it like we were talking about with the charcoal and solvent, but it is less textured than cold pressed watercolour paper. It doesn't matter which variation you use, that just depends on what you prefer, but what is important when you're working with watercolours is the thickness and weight of the paper. I would recommend a minimum thickness and weight of £140 or 300 GSM squared in order to absorb layers of water, so anything less than that is not suitable for watercolour. Finally, if you are using pastel pencils, then using a paper specifically designed for pastels is essential, as pastels are a very powdery and loose medium. I love the Pastel Matte paper by Clairefontaine, and I like this paper because there is a lot of variations of colour and it is designed for pastel work. This paper is very thick, it is 360 GSM squared, which is £170, and the thick paper means you can create a lot more depth and layering, whereas you wouldn't be able to do this if the paper was too thin. There is a lot of grain and texture to this, which is so important because the pastel particles need tooth and texture to grip onto, otherwise they will fall off the paper. It is also important that the pastel particles stay on the paper because they aid with blending and adding colour to a drawing. So I hope you found this video useful, and I have left a list down below of all the different types of paper I use and recommend, so if you want to check that out, all the information is in the description. I would be really interested to know if you use any of the paper I mentioned in this video, or if there are any other types of paper you recommend. Let me know in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you are new around here, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you never miss an update from me. Keep creating, and I'll see you soon. Bye!